Greetings to you all, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for joining us in tonight's edition of Viewpoint on DBS Television. In tonight's edition, we are going to be going or touching issues relating to the family as a whole, and we are honored to have as guest tonight Linda Fong. She is a motivational speaker, and we'll be having her live from Canada, Alberta province. Good evening to you, Linda, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very delighted to be here.
Manga Venashus, you will be accompanying us. Good evening and welcome as well.
Good evening, Vanessa, and good evening to our viewers out there watching us from Jakiri, watching us from Ndu, and watching us from Lom and Jerem Division in the East region of Cameroon.
Let us have the first part of the show. In the first question, given the rate of migration among young people today, should distance relationship be encouraged? Linda, to you, yes or no?
I would say no.
Manga Venashus.
I would take the opposing view. I think it should.
Yes. And can there be any reason for the frequent collapse of families these days? Linda.
Yes, I think there are many reasons actually.
Yes. Manga Venashus.
Yes, I share the same opinion.
Yes. Let us take the debate. If you are just joining us, you're watching Viewpoint on TBS Television, brought to you from Monday to Friday at 6:30 p.m. In the first question, given the rate of migration among young people today, should distance relationship be encouraged? Linda, in your opinion, do you think that a distant relationship should not be encouraged? And I would like us to have a case study, Cameroon.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the floor. I do not think distance relationship should be encouraged. Reason being, when somebody migrates out of their country, this is something that I feel like we don't talk a lot about. Migrating out of your country to another country into questions. I will speak for myself, for example. When I left Cameroon in 2014 and I came to then, the very first thing that I realized was transitioning from what I know life to be back home to the Canadian way of living. It wasn't an easy thing at all. Like during the process of getting to know my A from my B's from my C's, I went through a lot of personal, emotional, physical changes, which affected me a lot as I can say those few moments of my life took me to a level that sometimes I even ask myself, like, what happened? Just because you're put with so much pressure. The reason why I wanted to explain this thing to you before going to my point is just so you can understand how difficult it is for anyone to adapt to a new environment. So say, for instance, that you're coming here, you're trying to get A's and your B's figured out, and you have a relationship back home. We know what relationship entails. No relationship can thrive and survive without communication, without care, without concern. So you're here in a foreign land trying to make life happen for yourself, like trying to understand what life about, like what your current life it's all about. Not only are you trying to do that, but you're expected to maintain a relationship back home. You might not have the time because another thing too is the difference in time. Because here it might be in the morning, it might be night over there. You have to go to school, you have to find work, and all of those challenges. So I feel like personally, when two people who are in a relationship and one person travels out, I feel the likelihood of the relationship surviving is very slim. Speaking of personal experiences and speaking from what I've learned so far, I do not think long distance relationships should be encouraged.
Very much, Linda, for your contributions. Manga Venashus, you rather think that it should be encouraged, despite the fact that she has highlighted some points actually discouraging the difference in time, lack of communication, try to cope when you just migrated with the physical challenges, the emotional challenges, yet you still think that there is a way out to make it in this relationship distance.
Yes, Vanessa, when I say it should be encouraged, what I mean here is when we talk of this new technological age as a period in history where distance is no longer a barrier for anything, I would also include relationship. In those days, when we were growing, it had to take time for you to communicate with somebody who was out of your locality. You had to write a letter. I don't know how many people even understand what it means, letter writing in a relationship today. Because today it is enough to call somebody and you can share a whole lot of things. Today there are possibilities of communicating with somebody and feeling, that presence which did not exist in the yesteryears. When we were growing, we used to consider those, distant relationship as something that can't work. But this age, I believe that it can't, that it can do, and I think that we can encourage it. It all has to do with sticking to your words. Let your yes be your yes. It all has to do with being faithful to your words. And I would even bring in being faithful to the person. It's like maybe I'm supposed to travel out of the country today, or my wife travels out of the country today. We have to maintain the bond. We have to maintain the union. And if I were still free and I was intending, or a young man, a young woman intending to hook up with somebody.
Right. Manga Venashus, please let me cut you short.
Yes.
Take the case where you are not married.
Yes, that is why I was talking of a young woman.
So forget about your wife, because you married her before.
And you have an engagement already that you are
Think
respecting.
Of a case where, yes, you are just girlfriend, boyfriend.
Yes, Vanessa, when I used to say that, and like we are talking to young men and women watching us, I always say, if you are not faithful, if you can't keep to your word when you were just in a boyfriend-girlfriend kind of relationship, tomorrow marriage will not be a switch where you will just turn it on and you will become faithful and you would respect the word. I always say that those who have problems in a relationship, in marriage life, are those who had problems in relationship when they were single. Because as a single person, we have committed, in an unofficial way to be unofficial partners to each other. I use the term unofficial because if we are just in a boyfriend-girlfriend kind of relationship, I have accepted to be your boyfriend, you have accepted to be my girlfriend, and I think that is a kind of limited relationship. In that relationship, there is no third party. Just like in marriage, once we officially now open it to the world, there is no third party in this relationship. And if in that unofficial arena, you were not faithful, when we would open it to the world, you would not be faithful. To me, I look at distance not to be a barrier, not to be any hindrance to a relationship, because, like I said, in those years it could be because it takes time to communicate. Imagine when we were still growing just in Jakiri to write to somebody, perhaps in Yaoundé, in Douala, in Bamenda, in Bafoussam, it was a problem because you need somebody who is going down there and you can write a letter. Now, I can communicate we are now communicating live with somebody in Canada, which means even if she is in Canada, we still keep the bond. We would still keep, just a simple boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, we still maintain the relationship. So I don't see distance as a relationship, as a barrier in a relationship. And I would think that it should be encouraged. Why? Because Linda highlighted a number of factors. Once you get out there, they first tend to block you. It's true. They would come in place. But once they come in place, remember that you have a commitment back home. I would understand that she is out there, she's confronted with all those challenges, and of course, I will see with her. The only thing I think in a relationship is, like she said it, communication, being open to somebody, and I think with those two, once you put together, I think a relationship can go on, Vanessa.
All right, thank you very much, Mange Venatius. But I would still like to know from you, what then could explain the fact that most distance relationship do fail? Because that is an observation in our society nowadays.
Yes, I think Linda, who is out there, would tell us more, and that she would understand it better than I do here. But I think that all has to do with not being able to let your yes be yes and your no be no. I think that it all has to do with being strong enough to withstand, to overcome those challenges that she highlighted.
Okay, Linda, maybe the same question I asked to Mange Venatius. What then could explain the fact that a lot of relationships, these faraway relationships, do break along the line?
Well, as I said earlier, right? Because people, reality are not the same. And I know you guys know the saying that goes as thus: out of sight is out of mind. Phone calls, chat, whatever, they can never replace the physical connection. And let me tell you guys something. Most relationships where people are living very, very far apart, there is always a lot of distrust. You have a lot of trust issue. Even if you communicate, you talk on the phone 24 hours, like 7 hours, 7 days a week, it's never going to be the same as being physically there for one another. And another thing you have to also understand, in most cases, when people migrate, or when people usually migrate in their peak years. When I say peak years, I mean they are young, they're ambitious, they want to get things done for them, like live a better life. And we all know that a young person might not have the intellectual capacity of understanding what a commitment to another person is. I'm not refusing that some people do not get that, like, don't get committed in a relationship and they're successful at it. But what I'm just saying is, you cannot expect a young person, usually in their early 20s, they haven't experienced life in many ways. Maybe all what they have known has been, as you said, you grew up in Jakiri, right? Maybe they've never known any place farther than Bamenda. This young person goes to, say for example, I'll use my example of Canada, where you have so many freedoms, so many liberties, so many abilities to do things and become the kind of person that you never even dreamed you could be in life. So you're here, and obviously this requires a lot of hard work, a lot of determination, and a lot of being focused. So you'll be working on your life, trying to put your A's and your B's together, and you think that person will have the ability of making a long distance relationship to the point where you get to. I do not think so. I do not think so, because it's not an easy thing to do. As you said earlier, if you're a married couple, because even if you go back to what people's personal experience, I follow a lot of blogs online, and you hear a lot of people coming there sharing their personal issues, and most people who talk about long distance relationship, they never have anything good to say. In my immediate circle, I know a lot of people who were in long distance relationship, and out of a sudden, like relationship that we knew were hard as work, out of nowhere, boom, everything gone. Just to let you know, just because there is of that intimacy over a long time, people begin to pull apart, because relationship, it requires a lot of contact. I'm not going to use the word here because I don't know what our viewers are, because we want to try to keep it PG. But it requires a lot of physical connection for it to grow. Even when you're in your home with your partner, and you guys are lacking in that area, you guys drift apart. Yes, I know, like, youth nowadays, like us, we have learned a lot of ways to make this thing happen, even over the phone, but it's still not the same. And people grow. I grow old. Like, I'm not the same person I was last year. I've learned things that have shifted the way I reason. Usually when we are not together in the same space, our rate of growth is different. And can we say that doesn't affect our relationship? I think it does. So coming back to what you said, yes, there is a lot of technological advancements in life that can actually permit someone in my village womb to communicate with someone in the White House in America easily and clearly as we are talking right now. But still, is it the same? I do not think so. So that is why I feel like, especially when you're at a certain age in your life, you shouldn't think it's a good idea to maintain a long distance relationship, especially when you're going to a foreign land. You don't know what your future is going to be in that land. You don't even know if you will have to do mago to get your papers. And you can get tangled in it. So let's be realistic and let's be true to ourselves. Long distance relationship it's very, very, very difficult. And the likelihood of it surviving is almost to like less than 2%. So I still firmly think that long distance relationships are not something that we should be encouraging.
Let's be realistic and let's be truthful to ourselves. In the second question, can there be any reason for the frequent collapse of families these days, from relationships and now to a broader picture families? Linda, I think that we'll stay with you, and you think that there are a lot of reasons why families do collapse nowadays. Is it because of maybe lack of experience, or what actually could account for this?
Okay, so I get asked this question a lot, and I would bring it back to how society views the role of the woman and the man in the family. You know, as we always say, oh, our parents were able to keep and maintain relationship for a very long time. But when you start looking at how some of our mothers used to live in those days, you realize that most of them had to endure their relationships, not enjoying it. Believe me, like growing up, like seeing the way, like the dynamics of most relationships, I wouldn't say our mothers were given a fair chance to be who they are, why being married to our parents. Things have changed. Women nowadays are very ambitious. They are very educated. They know what they deserve, what they want. So a woman, even when she gets married, nowadays, she's not going to tolerate everything from her partner, because now she knows exactly who she is and what she represents. So when there is this change in ideologies, more men start feeling threatened. And then easily, because of the power struggle, jealousy sets in, miscommunication set in, which sometimes lead to abuse, breakdown in communication, and a lot more. So if we're looking at it from a man and woman standpoint, I feel like it has to do exactly with the societal expectation of the woman and the man in a relationship or in a marriage. But if we're going to because a family, especially in an African context, I think it's way bigger than just the man and the woman. It also has to involve like brothers, sisters, mothers, uncles, auntie, cousins. I feel like on the broader scale and on a larger level, family breakdown is usually caused by miscommunication, which I think is always number one. Lack of love. When family members fail to genuinely care and love each other, and there's a lot of jealousy. Like, say, for instance, in your family, you might be a successful person, your siblings or your cousins or your other families are not as blessed as you are. And some people might be jealous of you just because of that. And because of jealousy, it stems hatred. So those are some of the few things I think cause a breakdown in families nowadays.
Mange Venashus, in your point of view, I think I could highlight gender parity among the couples. I could think of societal pressure from what they expect from marriage. I could think of peer pressure as well as from the external family. So adding to that, what are some of those points that equally leads to a wreckage in marriage?
Vanessa, I think we need to find out. Linda said it, that the concept of marriage that we have in our period now is different from what our parents, our forefathers had. Because they used to tell us that so many of them discovered their partners on the day of their wedding. When they just simply tell you, this is your wife. They just simply tell you, this is your husband. And it goes, and they lived their lives. But today, that is not the same thing that we are going through. I think one of the reasons that most marriages are not surviving today is we tend to find out the reason from each partner. Why did you get married? What took you into this union? If your expectations are not met, the marriage will collapse. Like one preacher said it, if you are getting married to the man's worth, once the worth goes, the marriage would also follow the worth. If you are getting married because of the woman's outward physical beauty, remember that woman within a twinkle of an eye would change. And once she changes, everything changes with it. Everything would change with it. Because you did not get married to the person as an individual. You got married to the physical beauty. What happens?
You got
God
married
forbid,
to the what they are.
to the what they are, not the who they are. What happens if she runs into an accident? If he runs into an accident, would you still withstand? Some get married because the purse, like somebody said, of the husband is heavy enough. You are getting married to the purse, to the money, not the man. And what happens if the money goes? Nothing will hang on. Somebody put it, love today is no longer genuine. Love has a string that it is attached to it. There are certain things, they call it, that motivates love. And the majority of our marriages today are those motivated love. You know, in life, there is something that most, pricks your attention. But that thing should be something that is not ephemeral. It should not be something that is within a period of time. It should be who that person is. Not what he is.
Ask yourself, can I live with this person till my last days?
Vanessa, when they talk about marriage and all this kind of thing, I remember somebody, he is in Jakiri, they called him Mr. Godfrey Seka. He's a teacher, he taught me physics. Mr. Seka used to tell us, he told me, that once you are getting married, the question you always ask is, am I able to cope up with the weaknesses of this woman? Once you can, go ahead. Because there is no human being who is perfect. So we get into marriage expecting more. And once we get into the marriages or into the union and the realities that that confront us, we get disappointed. And in most cases, we bow out. So it is just all being able to withstand. Once I know that this other person has the weaknesses that I have.
I know your flaws, you know my own.
Of course. And Linda said something in the first part that communication has something to do here. The communication here is you need to know what I like, what I don't want. I need to know what you want, what you don't want. And if I know that this is what she does not want, if she knows that this is what he does not want, and go about doing it, I don't think you are promoting the marriage at all. I don't think you want a better life for that marriage. The marriage will be short-lived. So it is all about our focus? What is our purpose? What is the target? What are your expectations into this marriage? I think once you put them together, these are some of the issues that bring about the failure that we experience in most of the unions, Vanessa.
Okay, Mange Venashus. Linda, we have barely 1 minute to go. So if you are to encourage those that are in a long distance relationship, what could you actually tell them?
Well, I would just say, like, the only thing that could help to an extent is communication, right? But even though I personally think that long distance relationship, it requires a very, very, at least you can keep a long distance relationship if you guys have been together for over 5 years. That is the only way, or the only scenario where I can encourage long distance relationship, because at least you've gotten to know each other very well. And you also have to be willing to understand that the realities are going to be different, the dynamics will change, and you have to be okay with that. So that is the only advice I can have for any person who is in a long distance relationship. But if I was to say what's in my own point of view, I'll be like, you know what, get out of it and start your life over, because it's not really worth it nowadays.
It's not really worth it nowadays. That is the point of view of Linda Fong. She is a motivational speaker, and we had her live from Canada. Linda, thank you very much for your participation and contribution, and equally to you, Mange Venashus. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of today's edition. Do take a rendezvous for tomorrow, and from here we can call it a day. Thanks also to all the technical crew that made it possible for us to have today's edition. Stay tuned. Coming up next is the newscast in the English language.
Coronavirus is not an imagination or an invention. It is a real threat that spares no one. We are already counting so many